Our next guest, an Oscar winner.
Yeah.
And has a huge body of work under his belt, and I don't mean that as a penis reference.
He has huge junk.
He's going to be with the Philadelphia Orchestra. Have those sentences ever been uttered together?
I don't know.
Probably not. Tonight at the Man at 8 o'clock, and it is Star Trek Into Darkness. He has composed the music for the film, and they will be performing it tonight. Please welcome Michael Giacchino.
Thank you for having me.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. I have to say that was the most intense traffic music I think I've ever heard in my life.
That would have been
if I were listening to that, I've been like, driving into the sidewall on the,
Well, it's about being visceral, right? Music for you and for soundtracks, and we want to convey the rage that everyone experiences.
Hey, listen,
every day.
You've got a great ear because that song won a Grammy. That's Fish.
Yeah.
And they won a Grammy for that song, Best Instrumental.
There you go. Best car crash music ever.
I had actually considered, and I may have even tried one time, to use the Incredibles theme as a traffic bed for Kathy. But it was too much. It was too much of a distraction. The music was, because of all those horn punches and all those kicks and stuff.
Yeah.
It was a little bit. I need something a little bit more straight ahead. But this is obviously this is it. You wrote this.
I wrote that, and that music right there is while Mr. Incredible is driving his car.
There you go.
So
very aggressive.
Come on.
I actually, you know what? My son is in jazz band in middle school, and they had a concert not that long ago with the Souderton High School. Is in the Souderton School District. So it was the high school jazz band and the middle school jazz band. They were playing different shows, and the high school jazz band played selections from the Incredibles theme, and it was
Was it good?
Freaking.
What's your son play?
My son's a drummer.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so he didn't. He's still in middle school. The high school played the actual Incredibles theme, and the band instructor was telling the audience it was actually very complex for high school students to play that.
It is hard to play. It was hard for our players to play in Los Angeles.
Different time signatures and all kinds of complex changes and so forth. So was it hard to write?
It was fun to write.
I'll bet.
It was a blast to write because I grew up listening to Johnny Quest and the music in Johnny Quest.
Such an homage to that.
It's so good, that stuff, and the the James Bond films and Henry Mancini and all of those things. For me, it was just a big love letter to all of that stuff that I loved as a kid.
Well, it was sealed with a kiss, man. It's a great piece of music.
Thanks.
And the entire thing. I need to ask you, when you walk into a project, what begins musically for you? Do they say, all right, first we need you to watch the film, or do they say we need a theme song for this idea, and then we go from there? How does it start?
Usually it starts with me watching. It starts with me, but like take for J.J. Abrams for example, for Star Trek. We're friends, so I'm hanging out with him on the set. I'm watching him film. I'm watching him do all that. So I'm already kind of getting it into my head to a certain extent. But it really starts when you watch the movie, and it's all about what's going on inside the character's head. Like, I'm trying to figure out what is Kirk feeling at this moment. It's not about he's in the middle of a firefight right now. It's like, okay, well, he may be, but what is he feeling at that point?
And that's, to me, it's an interesting thing because I'm a huge movie soundtrack fan. Years ago,
really?
I was mocked for purchasing the soundtrack to Star Wars when it first came out.
You and I both.
Right. And so I'd go and I'd be flipping through, and I would love John Barry and Alex North and Jerry Goldsmith and all these people who are real. Who, for me,
where were you when I was a kid?
I know.
I needed a friend.
Classic composers. Because you watch a movie, and the art to what you do is so important to a movie because to me, it's as important as dialogue.
It's so funny you say that because Brad Bird, who directed The Incredibles, when he hired me, called me up. I was waiting forever to see if I was going to get that job. He called me up and he goes, "All right, you got the job."
Yeah.
I was like, inside I was screaming. I was so happy, but I'm like, okay, that's great. And he goes, but listen to me.
Right, yes.
Listen to me. He goes, your music could ruin my movie. And I'm like, well, I said, it's not my intention. I'm going to work. He goes, no, this is going to be the hardest job you've ever had, and your music could ruin my movie, and I'll tell you why. He said, because if you and I aren't on the same page every step of the way with the emotional content of the music, the audience is going to feel something I don't want them to feel. He goes, so you and I have to stay on the same page.
Spot on right. I mean, there are, and that's why, and I'm sure then as a kid you listen to the soundtracks.
Constant. You know what I used to do? I used to bring a tape recorder into the movie theater, the old Fox movie theater in Willingboro, New Jersey.
Right.
And I would record the movies. I would record Raiders of the Lost Ark, Close Encounters, whatever was playing.
God,
and I would listen to them incessantly, the whole movie.
Amazing stuff. Wow.
Okay, so you said you're on the set, you're watching this movie being filmed. Do you ever watch the movie with no music? Like before, do you watch it from start to finish with nothing?
Yeah,
you do.
Absolutely.
Okay. What's that like?
It's weird. It's weird, but it teaches you how to kind of like you. It feels naked suddenly. You're like, oh, I need something there. Like something will happen. Something will happen between two characters, and it's about finding that moment when you want music to come in. A lot of movies will just have music from front to the end, and it's just like it doesn't mean anything.
It just seems like it was an afterthought.
It does,
it's the greatest disservice. So what the director of The Incredibles was saying to you is true.
Right.
It is such a collaboration.
Yes.
And it can destroy a movie. Crappy
completely,
music.
Yes. And we've all seen movies that are terrible, and there may have been some of those movies that are terrible because there was just the wrong music or too much music, or the music is telling you something that the movie wasn't.
If I can just jump in quickly, we'll go to Nick. But a perfect example of that. I'm a big fan of the James Bond scores and John Barry.
John Barry, yeah.
And they did one with Michel Legrand, who's a great composer as well.
Absolutely, he's amazing.
Never Say Never Again, but he didn't nail it.
No.
And it sucked. No. And I remember watching the movie going, that's not just that Bond music.
Yeah.
So, and just as weird as it is, you have two competent people, but not on the same page.
Not on the same page, exactly.
Well, you talk about an emotional connection, and the first 15 minutes of Up with very little dialogue is among the most emotional 15 minutes of a movie ever. And then this is an animated feature, and so much of that is reliant on two things: the animation and what you provided for it. Was that an enormous amount of responsibility? And hopefully,
it was terrifying.
Were you satisfied with the results?
It was terrifying. I remember the first time I saw that movie, there was no music, and I remember watching that scene and being terrified, thinking, "Oh my God, what am I going to write for this?" Because I was crying watching the scene. Everyone,
beautiful.
Even when we were recording it, the producer, the director, all of us are sitting there just watching it, and we're crying during the whole thing. It was terrible, but it is terrifying because I'm just like, I don't know how to give what this thing needs, and it's always a best guess. You're always just, I'm just gonna, here it is, this is what I think it should be, what do you think,
But the amount of emotional luggage you're moving with what you do, it's an underappreciated art.
It's I think it comes from years of being made fun of as a kid, understanding empathy. It's about empathy and understanding what the characters are going through.
Michael, there's a science behind it as well, because there are certain keys, there are certain notes and phrases and combinations.
We all know D minor is the most sad key.
There are that elicit an emotional response from human beings.
Yeah.
And do you go to things like that, say, well, this is a very emotional moment, so it should be in this particular key?
Yeah, no, like on
we should
Up,
have this tempo. And
generally, I try to find like a chord or something that represents the feeling of that movie. And Up, if we had a piano here, I would play that chord for you.
Damn it, we should have a piano. Get a piano right now!
Lush has a piano in his office.
But you can just, hit the chord, and you go, and it elicits a feeling, and that's what you're always going for. Does it make you feel something? Right. And that's
I want to ask about where the score meets the soundtrack, and if you have a say in that, and if there is a particular point in the movie, have you ever made a call to go, you know what, this song that already exists would be perfect right here?
They have music supervisors that generally will look for those things, and that is something between the director. But occasionally, yes, it happens, and I'll be sitting with the director and go, what do you think of this song or that song? And we make a call on which one is better.
Michael, have you ever had a situation, and it's because to me, I take, for example, one of my favorite movies is Glory. That movie without
James Horner.
James Horner's brilliant
beautiful
soundtrack. Do you ever, as a composer, sometimes go to say to J.J. Abrams and say, no music here?
I'll tell you.
As painful as that might be to say, this lives better without the music.
Absolutely. Like, for example, on Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
That just came out. We finished that one, and we recorded the whole score, but I kept feeling like we recorded way too much music.
Yeah.
Way too much music. So it was about taking, oh God, here it is.
Yeah.
It was about watching, once you put all the music in, you can watch the movie and go, okay, you know what? That scene doesn't need music.
Right.
It's now too much, and that having no music finding out where not to put music is as important as finding out where to put music.
Because when the music comes in, it means something. It means something.
Yes, exactly. And
yeah.
So I'm constantly pulling music out of my scores in the film.
Sure.
I'm happy to do that because I grew up making movies. I grew up making animated films and live action films on my dad's 8mm camera.
You started on the directing side, and then moved it, which gives you a better understanding for your craft.
It's the storytelling. It's all about storytelling.
So you started on the directing side. When did you realize you could do this?
It wasn't until late in high school that I started actually writing just real simple things on the piano. And then when I got into college, I really, really started writing more and more music and just trying to figure out, okay, how does this work? And what are all the instruments? What do they do? What can they do? What can't they do? And I went to film school. And then after that, I went to music school.
You went to the School of Visual Arts. In Manhattan.
In Manhattan. Yep, 23rd and 3rd.
Yep. The TV show Lost made an impact on all of us, and it was incredibly well shot. And I think for the first time in a while, there was a live musical score to accompany a TV show, and so you did a lot of that. And I don't know if it just speaks to me personally, but your quote unquote sad music always gets me. And there's a slow piano build, and I think maybe a violin to go with this. We might have.
Oh, it's been used constantly. We use it all the time. It kills me.
Oh, there it is.
Is this you?
Yeah, that's me.
It's effing awesome.
Yeah, so sad.
But let me ask you.
Can I mention that Michael's wearing a trucker hat? he's not in a three-piece suit. He's wearing a flannel shirt.
He's a Jersey guy.
He's a Jersey guy.
He's also just off the Blue Collar Comedy Tour.
I kid you not. No, he's dressed like this, and it's awesome.
But let me ask you, because as I do voices on the show and I do things, and sometimes the most simple thing, like a Bogart impression or whatever, gets a huge response. Something I assume like that is fairly easy. Does it blow you away that something that is fairly simple get such a reaction?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, when I'm writing there, I'm just writing my reaction to watching the show. Now, Lost was a show that, week after week, you're doing another one. And I would have 3 days to write an episode of Lost. And that was about 35 minutes of music. It had to be written and orchestrated and then brought to the orchestra.
Full album, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So, so I would watch the show with no music in it and just watch it and just kind of react to what I was watching. So I would watch it in order, and then when I felt like there needed to be something, I would write something. So, and it's all just years of sitting there being sad.
If you're tuning in, it's Michael Giacchino is here with us, and he is going to be with the Philadelphia Orchestra tonight. Yeah, it is tonight, 8 o'clock, and it's Star Trek Into Darkness. The film is being shown. The orchestra is playing the score to it.
It'll give you a good appreciation, Preston.
And I have a question about when the orchestra goes into the studio to perform and to record. Are you conducting them?
For a film, generally I won't conduct because I want to sit with the director and watch the film with the director as the music's being played. Now, just to talk about the musicians for a second, these guys are the greatest in the world. They're like the rock stars of the classical sort of world. Film musicians can just sit down and play anything you put in front of them. No rehearsal. Yes. There is no rehearsal. You put it in front of them, they play it no matter what it is.
When I was in high school, I was in symphonic band, symphonic orchestra, jazz band, jazz lab, music theory, all this stuff. I took all those courses, and on occasion at competitions, they would hand you cold. Yeah. Here you go. Let's see if the band, you have 5 minutes to look at this, it's time to play. And we could never get it right.
Oh, it's so hard.
It's incredible
so hard.
How talented you have to be able to do that. I always... I'm fascinated by the putting music to visual images and having things sync up. If you want to hear some complex pieces of music, go back to the Warner Brothers cartoons and listen to just the music being played.
Carl Stalling.
And they're used as punctuations and sound effects to some extent. But there's no real time signature. No. How do you guys conduct to that? It's incredible, and the musicians follow along.
It was all back in those days. It was with a stopwatch. You would time it with a stopwatch, and you would say, okay, this is at 120 BPM, beats per minute, and then you could time out, then back out the math from there and time out. And the animators would also animate to sort of a click track. They would have a tempo that they would animate to. So then the guy could get the tempo.
That's
and know what
cell
to do.
animation. That's not. I'm going to hit
computers.
the undo button.
Yeah, no computers.
Yeah.
So now it's a much different thing. It's much easier to.
But you still do have time constraints and so forth. That you have to keep a song a certain or a movement of
there's
music.
a lot of, like when I'm watching something, I'm always like going like this. I'm always figuring out, okay, what tempo is this? What is the tempo of this scene? You know, what's the rhythm of the characters? What's the rhythm going on? So that's what trying to figure that out.
And like what's going on tonight with the Philadelphia Orchestra, I've seen a performance at the Man. It was with the Legend of Zelda,
right?
And the conductor has to wear headphones. And there's very precise timing that goes on. By the way, are you conducting the orchestra tonight?
Not tonight. Tonight. No, my good friend David Newman, who is also a film composer. He's incredible. You know, Galaxy Quest. What is better than that?
Love it.
Come on.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah.
Wait, Todd Glass has a question.
Believe it or not, I have one question. It's a genuine, but it might be a stupid question.
Okay.
There's that underground thing of Paul Anka when he's yelling at his band. And there's a line in there that you might be able to answer. But me and my friends are always like, he goes, "Do you want me to bring in a conductor? Because I'll bring in a conductor." I'm like, are people scared of conductors? Like, we don't know anything about music, but like, why are they? Does that make any sense at all? Why he would like?
You know what? There is a stigma to conductors that when they come in, they must command the orchestra, and everyone is afraid of them, and all of that. And that is true for a reason. There's sometimes that happens, but it's not always the case.
This, by the way, is a classic piece of audio of sort of a Paul Anka meltdown that Todd's talking about.
That is fantastic. Well, now I have to find that one and listen to it.
We're lucky in Philadelphia for a number of reasons, not least of which is that the Man's a great place to see a show, but we also have the Philadelphia Orchestra here.
Like one of the greatest orchestras on the planet, right?
And I think most Philadelphians don't know. I think that we maybe we take it for granted, but can you speak to a little bit about how good we have it having the Philadelphia Orchestra in this
think
town?
about it. It all started with Fantasia, right?
Right.
The Philadelphia
People
Orchestra.
don't know that either.
I mean,
Yes,
come on, these
it's
guys,
a little known fact.
These guys were playing film music before everyone else was playing film music.
Yeah.
You know, and
that was a live score for Fantasia.
Yep.
And who was the conductor for that? Do you remember?
Leopold Stokowski, right?
In the beginning.
Am I getting that
yes,
right?
he's the one that comes in the beginning.
Yes.
Yeah, you see a silhouette. Leopold.
Leopold.
You big fat opera singer.
But it's world renowned in Philly.
That orchestra is famous all over the world. You know, they're the best. They're the top. So I mean, it's like a huge honor that they are inviting us here to do this, and that we get to do this with them. They're going to be fantastic.
On just a basic level, you talked about Carl Stalling and the Carl Stalling Project. When I got to see the orchestra with the image, we see a movie as visual as the Star Trek film is, and then see what the orchestra is doing and hearing it at the same time. It's going to be a mind blower.
Oh, it's unbelievable. It's like something you can never experience at home or anywhere else unless you have a massive house that you can invite an orchestra in.
It seems weird.
Nice.
Really? Am I just seeing a movie that with the...
You forget sometimes. Sometimes you get lost in the movie and then you look down and you're like, oh my God, they're really playing that right now.
Yeah.
You kind of, it goes back and forth, or sometimes you're watching them and then you forget there's a movie up there.
Michael, what was the first TV show or movie you scored, and how does something like that happen?
It was a video
Alias.
game.
Alias.
Okay.
Alias was the first thing that I scored in. And you know how that happened? I had been scoring video games before that. I was doing a series called Medal of Honor.
We love Medal
And
of
how'd you
Honor.
get into that?
Well, that's a whole nother story. I mean, I was in marketing before that. I was working in PR and marketing at Disney, and then I moved into interactive. I started producing video games. They knew I wrote music, so they started asking me to do this and that for oh geez, I haven't heard that in 100. That's Call of Duty. I haven't heard that in 100 years.
I have to tell you, some of the best video game composing is another art unto itself, because there's some great. Obviously, you've been responsible for many of the soundtracks.
Doing the video games, I never realized. Like, I kept thinking while I was doing that, I want to do movies, I want to get into TV, but no one would let me. They would say, "No, you're a video game composer," so no one would hire me. And then I got this email from this guy named J.J. Abrams, literally out of the blue. I'm like, I don't know who this is, but he was like, "Look, I played your video games, and I'm working on a TV show at ABC. I love the music you write. Do you want to work with me on this show?" And I was like, this is a joke. Who is this? And I looked him up. He did Regarding Henry and the space shuttle. What was that one? I forget. Anyway, sorry, JJ. Anyway, so I went and met with him, and we became like instantly. He was just like me. He loved film scores. He loved that, and we were just off to the races from there.
So you are a video gamer yourself?
I suck at video games.
You suck at video games?
Yes. I've only played the first level of the first Medal of Honor, and I got so frustrated I died. I was like, I'm not doing this again. No, it's terrible.
Well, I play fairly often, and the music, they're now, for a while, like the great thing was Roger Ebert dismissed it. This is not art. No, I hate to tell you.
No, it is.
It is art.
It is. And I actually think I've written probably more World War II music than anyone on the planet.
Because of the Call of Duty
with
series.
Call of Duty, Medal of Honor, Fall of Liberty. There's like millions of them. I don't know.
I always go to that one scene in Forgetting Sarah Marshall, because Jason Segel's character he's a score writer, and so he's got he's getting frustrated with the type of music he has to write. Has that ever happened to you?
No, because I tend to work with the same people over and over, and I love what they do, and they're always changing it up, and we're always trying to do something different with the score each time. It's not one of those people that these aren't guys that say just give me what you did last time.
Yeah, Spielberg works with John Williams a lot.
Yes.
It's a comfortability. There's an unspoken language that they share, and it works.
It works, and it's like a little team, and you're friends, and you want to just keep doing things with your friends, and it's a really great thing to do.
Well, can you talk a little bit about working with J.J. Abrams and taking two franchises that already had existing music to it, like Star Trek and Mission Impossible,
right?
And you've worked on those movies, and there are iconic music.
Well, Mission Impossible was a funny one because I loved that show growing up.
Great.
I watched that. It's fantastic, and Lalo Schifrin's one of the world's great composers, of course, and wrote the greatest TV theme of all time,
and one that everybody knows.
Everybody knows, even if you never heard of Mission Impossible, you know that music.
Yeah,
I was so terrified getting into this. Come on, how great is that theme? It's so fun.
Yeah.
But I called him up. I was like, Lalo, I'm doing the new movie. Can I have lunch with you? And he was like, sure, meet me here. And I went, talked to him, and I was so nervous. I felt like I was asking someone if I could marry their daughter.
You're taking the iconic piece of music and working it. Yeah.
And he is such a hero to me. I wanted him to be okay with it, and I wanted to get his opinion. I said, what should I do and what shouldn't I do? I want to do this right, and I want to make you proud. What is it? Give me some advice here. And he just looks at me, and he's like, look, just have fun with it. And I was like, seriously, that's it? And he's like, yeah, just have fun with it. Go do your thing. And I was like, okay. But it was like such a great relief, because up to that point, I was so nervous.
Well, let me ask you, because of your J.J. Abrams association, and obviously we associate John Williams with Star Wars.
Yes.
Is there any crossover? Will you get to work on this series at all at any point?
If Disney has their way, they're going to make 1 million Star Wars movies, and they'll be shoving them down our throats one after the other.
Is it something you would want to do if presented with that?
Well, when this first came about, I was talking to JJ about it, and I was like, John should really do this.
Yeah.
It's his thing, and he created it. He should do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to, I'm a huge Star Wars fan myself, and if I go see Star Wars, I want to hear John's music. I don't want to hear my music. But
you're.
Come on, man. I know. Come on.
You certainly have the chops to. I mean, I'm not saying that false flattery.
Having said that, it would be fun to score a Star Wars movie. Are you kidding me? It would be a blast. Who
can you
in their right mind wouldn't want to do that, right?
Yeah.
So,
can you collaborate? Would that be a possibility?
John and I worked together on Star Tours for Disneyland. And that was great fun, being able to work with him on that and the arrangements for what was going on in that, and that was a lot of fun. And I've gotten to know him over the years, which was actually, in fact, it was funny during Up. When after I won the Golden Globe on Up, I was at home and I was cleaning the rabbit cage or something. And
yes, the actual living side of Hollywood.
And the phone rings and someone answers it, and they're like, "There's phones for you." And I was like, "Look, I'll call him back. I'm finishing with this rabbit litter."
Yeah.
And they go, "No, it's John Williams. He wants to talk to you." And I was like,
wow.
"What?" So he called just to say, "Pick up the phone and you hear this on the other side." Stop doing what you're doing. But he just called to congratulate me on Up and how happy he was about it, how much he liked it, and I thought that was the sweetest thing in the world. And since then we became friends, and he's just the greatest person on earth.
Well, of what you do, I always love to hear people whose work I admire and. Pick a soundtrack that you think is one that deserves a lot of attention that people may not have listened to. I can tell you a couple of mine, which would be Alex North, I believe, the composer for Spartacus, the music for Spartacus, and John Barry's score.
Well, did you ever hear Alex North's music for 2001?
Oh.
You know that he wrote the score for that before they threw it out, and then used all of.
I've heard bits and pieces of it.
Really good. It's really good music. That's a great one.
Actually, hang on. We might hold on a second here. Casey's got that version of that. This was. This was
the trained ear.
Yeah. There's a slight difference.
You know, it would, especially this crescendo coming up right here. Hang on.
It's genius.
But not quite the same.
Everyone talks about Carl Stalling, but you know what had great music was Tom and Jerry. It was written by a guy named Scott Bradley, who was working at MGM at the time. And Scott Bradley is sort of the underrated composer of the cartoon world. That guy was unbelievable, and in some ways, this is blasphemy. Some ways, I think better than the Warner Brothers stuff.
Well, there was no dialogue for the most part.
Yeah.
How do you do that? How do you pull that up so fast? As if you knew I was going to say that.
We're good. We're top notch.
We have a whole control room over there.
You know what I think is a cool thing? Like when somebody departs, artist Bernard Herrmann is one of the great composers of all time. He did the soundtrack for Taxi Driver.
I know.
And he was known for much more
like the Psycho kind of thing and all of that. Yes.
Right. And
that's a jazz score. I mean, it's incredible.
Is there any type of music, any area you're looking to get into that you're kind of biting at the bit to take a crack at? Are we going to hear like a real like a 2 Chainz hip hop thing coming out here?
Hip hop. I don't know. Maybe hip hop mixed with jazz.
Yeah.
Actually, that would be fun. I would like to do. I like doing those weirder things. I would like to do, and I would like to do a serious jazz score. I think that would be fun. I mean, The Incredibles was a jazz score, but it was a fun jazz score, and I think I would like to do a sort of a darker.
What about electronica? And does any of that?
I mixed a lot of that in with the Alias stuff in the early days, and as Alias went on, every season got more and more orchestral because the show itself got more and more serious and the character development and all of that. So it did change. So, God, I remember trying to get that synth to make that sound. It was the biggest pain in the butt because I was like, I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
But
what do you play? What you were trained on piano?
Yeah, trained on piano.
You can play anything now?
I can play anything badly. I play lots of instruments. Badly.
It's funny, man. My buddy, he's got a really good ear. He's never really been classically trained on anything, but he started with drums, and he can just sit down at a piano and go and just bang something out, and it sounds great. It doesn't.
Some people just have a knack for it. You just hear it, and But speaking of drum, I love drums. Like I wish I was an amazing drummer.
Yeah.
Preston's actually a pretty solid drummer.
Yeah,
he got to play with.
You can tell by the balloons on the corner.
He's right behind him.
That's Preston. Played with Questlove for a little bit from the Roots. And,
I love it. Well, I was just going to say, speaking of drums, my son plays guitar and piano and everything, and he loves classic rock.
You said he's getting into classic rock big time.
Big time. And it was great. So we just went and saw Boston the other night with Cheap Trick, which was great. They were amazing. We saw Billy Joel. We've seen The Who. We've seen Paul Simon. We saw the Rolling Stones. He's 16.
Okay. 16, and he's getting into all that.
He's we have to go see them now. If we don't see them now, they won't be around anymore.
He's kind of right.
He is sort of right.
Yeah.
It's funny because around that age, you can kind of go in a couple of different directions, and hip hop being and rap being one of them, and then classic rock being another, and that's what I did around that age.
Well, my kids were all raised on the Beatles, so I feel like if you start there, you cannot go wrong, right? Because then you have a way of determining is this a good song or a bad song. You compare it to the Beatles, and you're like, oh, Beatles better, this is bad, all that. It's a great litmus test.
Do you know the advantage though, which is something that didn't exist when we were kids, is that you can now go discover an entire pre-existing body of work, and you can consume it voraciously.
Yes, you can just get the whole thing. You don't have to wait for their next one to come out.
I heard a musician once say that 90% of the music that came out since the Beatles were in existence is derivative of the Beatles, and if pop music and rock music, and if the artist doesn't know that it's derivative, it's still derivative.
Right.
With your ear, can you hear it? Can you pick up influences from Beatles music to current day?
Totally. Instantly, I can hear like a chord change or something. I'm like, oh, that's totally John Lennon. He would totally do that. But that's art, right? The development of art. Art influences art, and it just keeps rolling along over and over and over.
You had that video. It was a composer who broke down a bunch of Beatles songs and how important they were to the change in the direction that rock and roll music took, and then broke it down even further into musical terms. Like in Penny Lane, there's 7 key changes in that song, and just how, and they may not have known exactly that they were doing all these really.
No, they didn't. They were just doing what
came out of them.
Sounded great to them. You know? And they were doing what sounded great to them. Now, this is going to sound like I'm bragging, but I was talking to Paul McCartney.
He got to talk to Paul McCartney.
And the guy is the greatest on the planet. But I asked him that very thing. I said, some of the chord changes are so strange and aren't what you would normally do. He goes, look, we were just doing what sounded good. We didn't really know if that chord was supposed to go to that chord. It just sounded cool to us, so we did.
They didn't know they were going to stick to the Dorian mode. And
no, it wasn't about that. It was just about the feeling.
Yeah, could you imagine if the impetus was, hey, I really want a song with 7 chord changes?
Yes, exactly. But it's amazing that they just went with it.
If you're feeling anything special right now, feel free to go home and write something for our show.
They can write you a brand new theme. We'll do a whole theme for the show.
And mention Todd Glass if you don't mind.
I brought this. I only brought 3 of these. I didn't know there was going to be a whole thing.
Kathy wants all of them.
I don't even know what it is.
No.
I'll take it back in the office and show you who really deserves it.
And it's the engineering. It's a Starfleet pin, in case anyone is listening.
Very nice.
Doesn't have any idea what I'm doing. I'm going to pass this over. And then
I booked this interview, so I'll take.
I have one more, so I'll put this over here.
I have a gift as well, but unfortunately, Michael, it's not for you. It is for listeners. I have passes to the show tonight to see Star Trek Into Darkness. And this is going to be at the Man. It's going to be beautiful tonight. The Philadelphia Orchestra playing Michael Giacchino's amazing score live. Tickets are on sale now at mancenter.org and ticketmaster.com, or you can call 800-745-3000 or the Man box office. But I will take the first 5 callers who have this evening free and would like a very special night. 215-263-WMMR, and I will give them all away right now since we have Michael here in our studio.
So cool. Yeah. Wonderful to see an orchestra like that perform. And if it's not your thing,
you know what? It's so interesting. It's more like going to a rock show because the audience actually responds to the picture. They respond to the music. They cheer. They yell, and I love that about it.
And the movie's great. I love the movie.
Oh, it's a fun movie. It really is. JJ did an amazing job. No, it's a really fun movie. The cast is fantastic too. I mean, that cast is perfect, right?
For a guy who came from the Star Wars universe, as J.J. Abrams freely admits he was, to have so beautifully translated Star Trek to a new generation the way he did, it's just phenomenal.
Yep, man, I agree.
So anyhow, do you get back to the Philadelphia, South Jersey area
every year?
much?
Yeah,
do you
every
really?
year, absolutely. My parents still live in the house that I grew up in, so that's where my kids are right now.
Next time we will have a piano here.
Okay,
yes.
You will be coming back, and we will be commissioning a theme song from you, please. Michael, thanks so much, man. Pleasure.
Thank you for having me so much. It's been an honor to be here.
Michael Giacchino, everybody, on the Preston and Steve Show.